For thousands of years, the Galactic Empire ruled the stars with confidence. Its banners waved across 1,000 worlds, and its fleets of shining silver ships moved through space like glittering waves on a dark sea. Entire civilizations had bent the knee, offering their loyalty and their resources to the mighty empire. None dared to question its authority, and no one had challenged its power for generations. The empire's people believed that their rule would last forever. They saw themselves as the highest form of life in the galaxy, wise, advanced, and untouchable. From their towering citadels on the capital world, the nobles and admirals looked out at the endless night of space and felt a sense of ownership over it. The stars, they believed, were theirs by right. But all of that began to change one quiet day when a faint, repeating signal was discovered in the outer reaches of their mapped space. It came from an unremarkable corner of the galaxy, a place so distant and small that most explorers had never bothered to visit it. The signal itself was weak, almost playful, a chain of radio waves carrying a simple message. When the translators worked on it, the words appeared on the screen in a language that was old, but elegant in its structure. It said, "We come in peace." The scientists laughed when they read it. Peace from such a primitive world? It was clearly a young species, just learning how to speak across the stars. They didn't know who they were addressing. They didn't understand the size of the galaxy, or the strength of the empire that ruled it. When the report reached the Imperial Council, there was amusement all around. The Emperor himself smiled faintly as he read the summary. "A new species reaching for the stars," he said softly. "How charming. Perhaps we should greet them." The council members nodded, eager to impress their ruler. They decided to send a scouting fleet to the edge of that solar system. It would be a simple mission. Observe the planet, scan its technology, and report back. If the species seemed useful, the Empire could offer them protection and trade. If not, they would simply be left alone, recorded as another young civilization still climbing the long ladder of progress. Admiral Taran Villar was chosen to lead the expedition. He was proud, confident, and deeply loyal to the Empire. To him, this mission was almost a vacation, a chance to see something new and to return home with tales of another peaceful discovery. The fleet of 10 ships left the nearest Imperial outpost and jumped into deep space. As the stars streaked by, the Admiral gazed at the holographic map on his command bridge. The system they were heading to was marked in pale blue, a small yellow sun with a handful of planets. The third planet from the sun was the one sending the signal. Its name, according to old local records, was Earth. He smiled. "A poetic name," he said to his crew. "Perhaps they'll make fine poets when we teach them proper science." The journey took several days. During that time, the Empire's data analysts studied what little they could find about the region. There were fragments of intercepted transmissions, music, and images from the early days of human broadcasting. The analysts listened to songs, speeches, and laughter, simple, emotional sounds from a world still learning its place among the stars. To the Imperial officers, it was amusing. "They are sentimental creatures," one of them remarked. "They sing about love, loss, and hope." "How curious. They are dreamers," another replied. "But dreamers do not survive in space for long." When the fleet finally emerged near the outer edge of the solar system, they expected silence. Instead, their sensors began to light up immediately. There were satellites, thousands of them, moving in perfect order around the planets. Some were small, others massive, carrying symbols the computers could not yet identify. Data waves moved between them at high speeds, bouncing across the system in an intricate network. Admiral Valar raised an eyebrow. "So they've built a communication grid already," he murmured. "Impressive for primitives." The fleet moved slowly inward. They passed by Neptune, then Uranus, and the Admiral watched through the main viewport as the pale blue orbs drifted below them. Every planet seemed peaceful, untouched. But there was something strange. The human transmissions were not random. They were organized. The signals seemed to react to the presence of the Imperial fleet, shifting frequencies and patterns as if tracking them. By the time they reached Jupiter, the Imperial engineers were whispering among themselves. "They're watching us," one said. "Their machines are studying our path." The Admiral dismissed the thought with a wave of his hand. "Impossible. They cannot detect our stealth systems. These readings are only coincidences." but deep inside he felt the first hint of unease. Finally, the fleet approached the orbit of Earth. The planet itself appeared blue and green, covered in oceans and white clouds. It was beautiful, glowing softly in the darkness of space. Around it were hundreds of satellites and stations, forming a ring of human technology. And then the fleet's long-range scanners picked up something even more surprising. Ships. At first, they thought it was a mistake. But as the data came in, the numbers grew. There were dozens, then hundreds, then thousands of ships. Some were small, some large, and many were arranged in formation. Their designs were unfamiliar, sleek, sharp-edged, and clearly built for defense. The admiral leaned forward in disbelief. "Identify those vessels," he ordered. The scanners whirred and clicked, sending streams of data across the holographic displays. The results were confusing. The ships carried energy signatures the Imperial computers couldn't match to any known type. Their reactors didn't resemble fusion or plasma power. It was something different, cleaner, quieter, more efficient. "What kind of technology is this?" an officer whispered. No one answered. The human fleet did not attack. They didn't even move closer. They simply floated in formation, watching. A transmission came through the Imperial comms channel, calm, clear, and polite. "This is the United Earth Fleet Command. You are entering a restricted defense zone. Please identify yourselves and state your purpose." The Imperial bridge fell silent. The admiral frowned. Their voices sounded confident, not fearful, not desperate. It was as though they were used to this kind of encounter. He gave a short laugh. "So they believe they can speak as equals," he said. "How bold of them." He sent his reply. "This is the Galactic Empire. We have come to observe your world and assess its progress. Lower your defenses and prepare to receive our representatives." A pause followed. The humans did not reply immediately. When they did, their tone was calm, almost friendly. "We appreciate your visit. However, our defenses will remain active. Observation is welcome, but any hostile action will be met with resistance." The words were not threatening, yet they carried quiet strength. The admiral's crew exchanged uncertain looks. For the first time in years, they were speaking to someone who did not bow. The admiral forced a smile. "We will see how long their courage lasts," he said. He ordered his ships to begin a full-spectrum scan of Earth and its fleet. But as soon as the scanners activated, every display on the bridge flickered. The readings vanished. A wave of interference filled the air. "Admiral," a technician called out, "our systems are being jammed. We can't read anything." "Impossible," the admiral snapped. "Who could—" Then he stopped. The human ships were still motionless, their lights steady and calm. It was as if they didn't even notice what the Empire was trying to do, or worse, they were letting it happen on purpose. The admiral clenched his jaw. He could feel a strange sensation, not fear exactly, but confusion mixed with disbelief. No species had ever stopped an Imperial scan before. No species had ever dared to speak to the Empire without trembling. And yet, here they were. Humans. Calm. Confident. Chuckling softly on their side of the void. In that moment, Admiral Velar realized something he had never considered before. Perhaps the Empire had not discovered this world. Perhaps this world had allowed itself to be found. The fleet drifted in silence, caught between curiosity and caution. The admiral leaned back in his chair, watching the blue planet on the screen. "Strange," he said quietly. "They seem amused." No one dared to answer. Out there, orbiting their quiet little world, humanity was watching and waiting. The Imperial fleet hovered at the edge of Earth's orbit, silver ships glittering in the sunlight. Each vessel carried the pride of the Galactic Empire: tall command towers, endless weapon arrays, and the unmistakable emblem of power that had conquered half the galaxy. Inside the command bridge of the flagship Veneris Dawn, Admiral Terran Velar stood straight, his hands clasped behind his back. His eyes watched the blue and green planet spinning slowly below. Despite its beauty, he saw it as nothing more than another world to study, perhaps to guide or govern under the Empire's name. He had faced many alien races before, some curious, some fearful. All had eventually submitted, so when the humans had responded to his message with calm defiance, he felt a spark of irritation and curiosity. The humans had said, "Observation is welcome, but our defenses will remain active." Such words would have been foolish coming from any other world. Yet the tone had not been arrogant or nervous. It had been steady, almost amused. The Admiral tapped a finger against the armrest of his command chair. "Let us see how strong their defenses truly are," he said. The communication officer looked uncertain. "Admiral, are we initiating another scan?" "Of course," Valar replied. "But increase power by 30%. Let's test their limits." The moment the order was given, the fleet's scanners began to hum again. Streams of light and invisible energy waves stretched out toward Earth and its surrounding ships. For a brief second, the data came through perfectly. Atmospheric details, mineral scans, and faint traces of technology. Then once again, the screens flickered and went blank. Every sensor across the fleet froze. The technicians began working rapidly. "Admiral, the signal interference is stronger than before," one called out. "They've blocked every frequency we're using." Valar frowned. "Impossible. We've mapped over 10,000 signal codes. No species should—" He stopped when the main view screen lit up with a sudden image. It was a symbol, a glowing white circle surrounding a smaller blue one. The words beneath it appeared in calm, simple text. "Unauthorized scans detected. Please refrain from further system interference." Then the message vanished, replaced once again by the silent stars. The bridge fell into a stunned silence. "They knew exactly what we were doing," whispered an officer. "And they sent a warning in seconds." The Admiral's jaw tightened. "They are bluffing. Their technology cannot surpass ours. This is a show." But even as he said it, he knew something was different this time. Their scanners hadn't simply failed. They had been shut down gently, almost politely. Whoever was behind that signal hadn't attacked or damaged the systems. They had simply turned them off as if flipping a light switch. It was a quiet display of confidence, the kind that didn't need force to prove its power. Meanwhile, on the other side of the starlit distance, aboard the HSS Venture, the flagship of the United Earth Fleet, Admiral Kira Holt watched the Imperial fleet's movements with calm interest. Her crew worked in perfect silence, their screens filled with readings and holographic data. The alien ships were magnificent, large, heavily armored, and beautiful in design. But the humans had long since learned that size and appearance did not define power. "Are they scanning again?" she asked softly. "Yes, ma'am," replied the communication officer. "They're pushing more power this time. I think they want to see what happens if they insist." Kira smiled faintly. "Then let's show them that curiosity is welcome. But manners are better." She nodded to her science team. "Activate mirror field. Reflect their signals back at 10% intensity. No damage, just confusion." Within seconds, a shimmering blue light rippled across the human ships. The Imperial sensors on the other side started receiving distorted data, not about humans, but about themselves. Their scanners began picking up their own ship readings as though the humans were holding up a cosmic mirror. On the Veneris Dawn, the crew panicked. "Admiral,
The readings are looping back."
it says there are Imperial ships on both sides of us." Valar slammed his fist gently against the console. "Enough of this nonsense. Reopen communication with their command ship." Moments later, a calm voice filled the air. "This is Admiral Kira Holt of the United Earth Fleet. We kindly ask that you stop scanning our planet. If you wish to speak, we are open to communication." Her tone was soft but firm. The Admiral on the Imperial side frowned. "You dare to command the Empire?" "Command?" Holt replied with a light chuckle. "No, Admiral. We're simply making a request, one professional to another." There was a long pause on the Imperial bridge. Her voice carried no fear, no anger, just quiet control. It reminded Valar of the way experienced captains spoke before a storm, calm, deliberate, sure of their position. He leaned back. "Very well, Admiral Holt, you may speak. Tell me, how did your species develop such technology so quickly? Your planet was unknown to us until now." "That's because we never wanted to be found," she said simply. "We've been watching the galaxy for a long time. We prefer peace, but we believe in being ready." The Admiral narrowed his eyes. "Are you suggesting that your people have explored the stars before this contact?" "Explored, learned, and grown," Holt replied. "You might be surprised how far humans will go when they work together." Her words carried pride, but not arrogance. It was a tone that said, "We've earned this strength, not stolen it." Valar studied the holographic projection of her face on his screen. Calm eyes, neat uniform, no sign of nervousness. She seemed completely at ease. "Impressive," he said at last. "But you must understand the Galactic Empire maintains order across countless systems. If you wish to exist peacefully, you should consider joining our governance. We can offer you protection and advancement." Holt smiled. "Protection? From whom?" The Admiral hesitated. "From the dangers of deep space. There are threats beyond imagination." "Admiral," she interrupted politely, "we've already met those threats, and we survived." Her confidence made the Imperial crew uneasy. The Admiral's assistant whispered, "Sir, perhaps we should analyze their fleet before continuing." Valar waved his hand. "Do it quietly, no more visible scans." As the conversation continued, smaller Imperial drones moved to the side of the fleet trying to capture visual data. But as soon as they approached within a certain distance, they vanished from sensors. Not destroyed, not blocked, just gone. The humans had created a zone of silence. The communication officer turned pale. "Admiral, we've lost our drones." Valar stared at the dark space between the fleets. His mind raced. What kind of power was this? No weapon, no explosion, no sign of energy, just absence. "Is everything all right on your side?" came Admiral Holt's calm voice. Valar took a slow breath. "Your methods are unusual." "We prefer control over chaos," she replied kindly. "It's easier that way." For the first time in years, Admiral Valar found himself without words. Every move he made was met with quiet precision. Every display of power answered with effortless grace. When the communication ended, the bridge was silent again. His officers looked at him uncertain. "Admiral," said his science officer carefully, "I think we underestimated them." Valar didn't answer. His gaze was fixed on the planet below, its clouds rolling gently in white swirls. Humanity had seemed so small from a distance, yet now, faced with their calm strength, the Empire suddenly felt old. He turned away from the view. "Prepare a report for the Emperor," he said at last. "Tell him this species is not to be taken lightly." As his officers obeyed, he caught one last glimpse of the human fleet. Hundreds of ships, holding their position with perfect stillness. Their blue lights shimmered quietly in the dark, forming a silent wall of readiness. The Admiral felt something stir in him, not anger, but a kind of reluctant respect. These humans didn't threaten. They didn't boast. They simply stood their ground, patient and amused like teachers watching eager students. He almost smiled. "So this is humanity," he murmured. "They laugh even when facing an empire." Back aboard the HSS Venture, Admiral Holt stood before her crew. "They'll return," she said. "Curiosity always does." One of her officers grinned. "Do you think they're afraid of us?" She shook her head. "No, not yet, but they're starting to understand that humans don't bow easily." As Earth turned below them, the stars reflected in the ship's silver hull. The fleet drifted silently, waiting, watching, ready for whatever came next. And somewhere deep in the void between the two forces, the faint sound of human laughter echoed through the static of space. Soft, calm, and confident, the sound of a species that had earned its place among the stars. The silence between the two fleets lasted for hours. Neither side moved, neither side fired. The vast emptiness of space stood still, holding its breath between two civilizations, one ancient, one new. On board the Veneris Dawn, Admiral Terran Valar paced the command deck, deep in thought. His pride as an Imperial officer burned quietly beneath his calm surface. The Galactic Empire had faced hundreds of species across the stars. Some had resisted, but all had eventually submitted. And yet here was a planet barely known to the Empire, standing against them without fear. He found that curious. But curiosity in the Empire's way of thinking was always tested through action. "Prepare the energy beam," the Admiral said at last. The command crew looked up in surprise. "Admiral? You mean the solar lance?" "Exactly," Valar replied. "One short pulse. Not aimed at their planet, only toward the edge of their fleet. A demonstration. Let's see how they react." The officers hesitated. It could be misunderstood as aggression. Valar gave a small, confident smile. "If they truly believe in peace, they'll understand restraint. If not," he paused, "then we will know their true nature." The command bridge came alive with soft light. Power channels glowed along the ship's hull as energy built within the beam array. The other ships in the fleet pulled back slightly to give the Veneris Dawn a clear line of fire. The admiral gave the order. "Fire the lance." A bright golden beam shot across the darkness, fast, focused, and perfect. It wasn't meant to destroy anything, only to make a point. But before it could even reach halfway to the human fleet, something unexpected happened. The beam curved. Every officer on the bridge froze. The path of light bent gently, as though hitting a river of invisible water. Then it faded, completely absorbed into the blackness of space. All the readings on the screen blinked out. No reflection, no energy signature, nothing. It was as if the beam had vanished from reality itself. "Report," Villar demanded. The science officer's voice trembled slightly. "Admiral, the energy disappeared. We can't detect any residue or scatter effect. It's gone." Velar turned to the main display, his eyes narrowing. The human fleet remained motionless, still shining quietly with blue lights. No weapon systems were active, no shields visible. Yet something had clearly stopped the Empire's most advanced energy weapon. "Did they use a counterbeam?" the admiral asked. "No, sir. There's no trace of energy discharge. Whatever they did, it didn't even register as power use." The bridge was silent. Then a soft chime filled the air, an incoming message. "This is Admiral Kira Holt of the United Earth Fleet," came the calm voice. "We noticed your test. We recommend against further demonstrations." The tone was polite, even friendly, but the words carried a weight the Empire wasn't used to hearing. The humans hadn't shouted, threatened, or even scolded. They had simply acknowledged the Empire's action and gently told them to stop. Velar felt something unfamiliar. Not anger, but confusion. How could this small world block a solar lance? And how could they do it so quietly? He leaned forward. "Admiral Holt," he said through the comm link, "your reaction was impressive. May I ask what technology you are using?" There was a brief pause before she answered. "We're using what we call adaptive energy shielding. It's a recent development." "Impossible," Velar muttered under his breath. The Empire had spent centuries trying to stabilize adaptive fields without success. He replied aloud, "That level of control is beyond what we believed possible for a single planet's development. You must have had help." "Perhaps," Holt said lightly, "but we prefer to think of it as human creativity." The way she said creativity made Velar's officers exchange uneasy glances. There was no arrogance in her tone, but there was confidence, the kind that came from knowing exactly what you could do. While the Empire's ships recalibrated their sensors, the humans observed quietly. Inside the HSS Venture, Admiral Holt and her team studied the reaction. "They're stunned," one officer said. Holt nodded. "Good, but we'll need to be careful. They're proud, and proud people make mistakes when they feel uncertain." The room's large display showed the Imperial fleet repositioning itself. Holt noticed how rigidly they moved, like dancers following an old pattern. It reminded her of history lessons from Earth's past, armies that believed size was strength, unaware that the world had already changed. "Any new transmissions from their side?" she asked. "None so far," replied her comms officer, "but their secondary fleets are moving closer. They're bringing reinforcements." Holt folded her hands behind her back. "Let them come. The more they bring, the clearer the difference will become." She wasn't being boastful. Humanity had spent centuries uniting its science, technology, and spirit. They no longer built ships to conquer. They built them to survive, and that difference made them stronger. Back on the Veneris Dawn, Admiral Velar received word that 2 more Imperial fleets were approaching from hyperspace. The Emperor himself had sent a message. "If this new species shows promise, establish dominance through controlled engagement. Demonstrate the Empire's superiority, but do not start a war." Velar bowed respectfully to the projection. "Yes, Your Majesty. I will handle this with care." He turned to his officers. "Prepare the fleet for formation demonstration. We'll show them what true order looks like." Within minutes, hundreds of Imperial ships arranged themselves into a massive diamond pattern, stretching across space like a silver shield. The humans responded by adjusting slightly, their ships drifting into graceful arcs forming layered rings around Earth. The 2 formations faced each other, silent and still. Velar smiled faintly. "They think they can mirror us," but then something remarkable happened. The human fleet began to shimmer, tiny flashes of light flickering between the ships. At first it looked like a reflection of starlight, but soon The lights formed patterns, glowing geometric lines connecting every vessel. The Imperial sensors identified millions of micro-signals being exchanged at once. The human ships were not operating independently. They were linked together in one vast network, thinking and reacting as a single entity. Valar's science officer whispered, "Admiral." "It's as if their entire fleet is alive." Valar's voice lowered. "What do you mean alive?" "I mean the coordination is instant. There's no delay between their ships. It's faster than communication speed allows. It's like they share one mind." The Admiral said nothing. For the first time in years, he didn't know what to say. On Earth, deep within the United Earth Defense Command, scientists and engineers monitored the encounter from secure control rooms. Every human ship in orbit was part of a synchronized network, a system built not on dominance, but trust. Each ship's AI worked in harmony with human officers, combining logic and instinct into perfect cooperation. It was humanity's greatest achievement, not just technology, but unity. When the Empire had expanded across the stars, it had ruled through fear. Humanity, on the other hand, had learned through survival, teamwork, and persistence. And so, when faced with the mighty Galactic Empire, they did not tremble. They simply smiled and waited. Admiral Valar broke the silence with one more attempt to test their limits. "Prepare the drone array," he said. "Deploy 20 probes. I want to study their defenses directly." The drones shot forward, tiny specks of silver racing toward the human formation. For a while, everything seemed normal. Then, as the drones reached the outermost layer of the human fleet, they slowed and stopped. The readings vanished. "Signal lost," said the technician. "We've lost all 20 drones." Valar frowned. "Destroyed?" "No, sir. Just gone. There's no explosion, no impact, no trace of them anywhere." Before he could respond, the main screen flashed again. A new message appeared. "Please stop sending probes. We find it distracting." There was no signature, no voice. Just the polite text, followed by a small symbol. A laughing emoji. The bridge fell silent. Someone near the back let out an uncertain laugh, quickly silenced by the Admiral's glare. Valar leaned back in his chair, watching the message fade. "They're mocking us," he said quietly. But deep down even he could feel it. The humans weren't mocking out of pride. They were simply amused, as if they'd already seen this kind of test before. For the first time, the great Galactic Empire found itself not feared, not challenged, but gently laughed at. As the human fleet drifted in perfect formation, Admiral Holt watched the Imperial ships on her display. She knew what they were feeling: confusion, pride, and disbelief. She smiled softly. "They'll learn," she said. "The galaxy always does." Her first officer turned to her. "Should we contact them again?" "Not yet," Holt replied. "Let them process what they just saw. Sometimes silence teaches better than words." Outside, in the quiet dark of space, two mighty fleets floated face to face. One was old, built on power and order. The other was young, built on unity and patience. And though no weapon had fired and no battle had begun, everyone watching across the stars knew something had changed. For the first time in the long history of the Galactic Empire, someone had made them hesitate. And humanity simply chuckled. The Emperor of the Galactic Empire sat in silence as the grand chamber filled with whispers. Holograms of the human fleet hovered above the table, smooth white ships glowing with blue light. They were nothing like the metallic giants the Empire had built. They looked elegant, almost alive. For the first time in centuries, the Empire was confused. Their fleet had met an unknown species, and instead of surrender or fear, they had received calm laughter and polite warnings. The Admiral who led the mission now stood before the Emperor, his face pale. "Your Majesty," the Admiral began slowly, "the humans, they are beyond what we expected. Their technology doesn't match any known design. Their ships move faster than our sensors can track, and their communication systems—" "Enough," the Emperor interrupted. His tone was calm but heavy. "You mean to tell me a single system of newly discovered creatures made our fleet retreat?" The Admiral lowered his head. "Yes, Your Majesty. But it was not due to weakness. It was because engaging them would have meant disaster. They did not attack us. They simply made it clear they could." The hall went silent. Generals exchanged nervous looks. The Empire had never met a civilization that could speak to them as equals. The Emperor turned to his science advisor, a tall, silver-eyed alien named Dranix. "You studied the recordings," he said. "What do you make of these?" "Humans." Dranix stepped forward. "Sire, they are not a typical young species. Their technology appears mixed, simple in some ways, yet impossibly advanced in others. Their ships are built from materials our scanners cannot identify. The hulls react to energy, as if the ships themselves are aware of the environment." The Emperor frowned. "Are you suggesting their ships are alive?" "Not alive in the biological sense," Dranix said, "but possibly built with self-adaptive materials. Something that learns. Something that grows." The Emperor leaned back in his crystal chair. For years, he had believed the Empire's science was the peak of the galaxy. Now it seemed they had been overtaken by a small blue world no one had ever heard of. "Tell me about their power sources," the Emperor said. Dranix sighed. "We don't know. Their energy readings are unlike anything in our database. No radiation leaks, no plasma waste, and yet the power output is enormous. It's as if they're using pure energy, stabilized by unknown physics." The Emperor's hand tightened on the armrest. "That is impossible." Dranix bowed slightly. "It should be, yes. But humans have made the impossible look simple." Meanwhile, aboard the human flagship HSS Venture, the mood was calm and relaxed. Captain Rhea Carter looked out at the stars, sipping her tea. The Galactic Empire's fleet had withdrawn 2 days ago, and no further contact had been made. Her crew worked quietly around her, analyzing the data from the encounter. The bridge was filled with the soft hum of computers and the faint reflection of starlight. "Any word from the Empire?" she asked. Her communication officer smiled. "Only silence, ma'am. They're probably having meetings, trying to understand what just happened." Captain Rhea nodded. "Good, let them think. We didn't harm them. That should tell them more about us than any weapon ever could." She looked at the holographic display showing the Empire's last known trajectory. Their fleet was vast, more than 100 ships all returning home to report. Humanity had come a long way since the days of rockets and satellites. In her log, Rhea typed a few words. "Encounter successful. No conflict. Message delivered. Humanity stands in peace but not in fear." Back in the Imperial Palace, the council meeting continued late into the night. The Emperor's closest advisors sat in a circle, debating what should be done next. One general slammed his hand on the table. "We cannot allow them to grow unchecked. If humans possess technology we cannot understand, they could become a threat in time." A calm voice answered from across the room. "Or they could become allies," said Lady Arena, the Imperial ambassador. She was known for her wisdom and diplomacy. The general glared at her. "Allies? They humiliated our fleet." Arena shook her head. "No, they didn't. They showed restraint. If they had wanted to humiliate us, they could have destroyed the fleet without warning. Instead, they let us leave unharmed. That is not humiliation. That is mercy." The Emperor listened carefully. "You believe they act out of kindness?" "I believe they act out of understanding," Arena replied. "They know what power means, but they don't use it carelessly," Dranix added. "They might see us the way we see younger civilizations, not as enemies but as learners. That would explain their calmness." The Emperor stood and walked to the great window that looked out over the shining city. The capital world glowed like a jewel under the stars. "Once we thought we ruled the stars," he said softly. "Now it seems the stars have other rulers." "No, Your Majesty," Arena said gently. "They don't rule. They simply belong there, and maybe it's time we learned to share that sky." The next morning, a message was sent from the Empire to the humans. It was short and formal. "To the representatives of Earth and its fleets, the Galactic Empire acknowledges your presence and requests a meeting to discuss peaceful coexistence." On board the Venture, Captain Rhea received the message with a faint smile. "Looks like they're ready to talk," she said. Her first officer chuckled. "Didn't take long. I think they realized we're not exactly what they expected." Rhea nodded. "Good, let's prepare the diplomatic crew. It's time the galaxy met humanity. Properly this time." A week later, the meeting took place on a neutral space station orbiting a quiet white star. The room was large, with transparent walls showing the vastness of space. The Imperial delegation arrived first, tall, proud figures in golden uniforms. The human team followed shortly after, dressed simply but with quiet confidence. When the two sides met, there was a long silence. The Empire's representative, Lady Arena, was the first to speak. On behalf of the Galactic Empire, we welcome you. Your presence has surprised us, but it has also inspired us. We wish to understand. The human ambassador, Dr. Isaac Hale, smiled warmly. And we wish the same. Humanity has learned that peace is stronger than pride. We explore not to conquer, but to connect. Arena tilted her head. Then why did your fleet stand against ours? Hale's eyes softened, because peace only lasts when strength protects it. We defend our home, but we never seek to harm. You came in force. We simply wanted you to know that Earth is not afraid. There was no anger in his tone, only calm truth. The Empire's delegation exchanged glances. They could feel something different in these humans, a quiet confidence that came not from arrogance, but from unity and wisdom. The Emperor, who watched the meeting through a live link, whispered to his aides, "They are not like us." They laugh, but not out of mockery. They laugh because they have learned not to fear the unknown. The council room filled with thoughtful silence. For the first time, the Empire looked upon another civilization not as an enemy or subject, but as a partner. When the meeting ended, both sides exchanged formal gestures of friendship. The human ships departed first, leaving behind a faint blue trail that shimmered like light in water. On the Imperial homeworld, citizens gathered in squares to see the recordings. They saw the humans, simple, calm, smiling beings from a faraway world, who had faced the mighty Empire and stood unshaken. Children pointed at the screens asking, "Who are they?" And teachers answered, "They are humans, the ones who chuckled when the Empire arrived." That night the Emperor sat alone in his private chamber. The stars glimmered outside his window. He remembered the calm laughter in the humans' final transmission. He smiled faintly and said to himself, "Perhaps it is not power that defines greatness, but peace." Across light years on Earth, Captain Rhea Carter looked up from her command deck, gazing at the same stars. "We did well," she murmured. "Maybe they'll understand now." Her crew nodded. "They will, and one day they'll laugh with us too." The stars shimmered quietly as two civilizations, one old and proud, one young and wise, began a new chapter of understanding. And somewhere between them, the echo of human laughter drifted through the galaxy, calm, confident, and everlasting. The vastness of space stretched endlessly, dark and still, yet full of possibility. Stars glittered like tiny lanterns, distant suns illuminating the countless worlds of the galaxy. The Galactic Empire had ruled over many of them. Yet the humans from Earth had changed everything, not through war, but through quiet confidence, intelligence, and a simple laugh that echoed across the void. After the diplomatic meeting, the Imperial fleets had returned to their systems carrying records, data, and impressions that would be discussed for decades. Scientists, generals, and advisors debated what they had witnessed, a species small in numbers but immense in courage, unity, and ingenuity. The humans had demonstrated their ability to control technology, energy, and thought in ways the Empire had never imagined. Admiral Taran Velar stood on the command deck of his flagship, staring at the fading blue light of Earth. His crew worked silently, still trying to process what had occurred. For centuries, Velar had led conquests, negotiated alliances, and faced challenges of all kinds, but nothing had prepared him for this. "They didn't attack," said one young officer. "They didn't even try to harm us, and yet we almost couldn't touch them." Velar nodded slowly. "They didn't need to. They simply showed their strength and waited. That is the most dangerous kind of power, the kind that doesn't seek to dominate but cannot be ignored." A murmur of agreement spread across the bridge. Every officer felt it. The humans' calm defiance had left a mark, subtle but undeniable. They had seen what most civilizations never experienced, true courage combined with wisdom. Back on Earth, Admiral Kira Holt watched the Imperial fleets disappear into the distance. Her crew cheered quietly, not loudly, because they respected the gravity of what had happened. The galaxy had met humanity for the first time, and humanity had shown that it was ready for the stars. Captain Holt turned to her team. "We didn't conquer them. We didn't attack. But we made sure they understand one thing. Earth is prepared." Her first officer, Lieutenant Marco Silva, smiled. "And they probably won't forget it for 1,000 years. Holt chuckled softly. "No, they won't, but more importantly, neither will the galaxy. The human fleet returned to orbit around Earth. Ships docked in silent harmony, systems hummed quietly, and the crew went about their duties with calm efficiency. Yet the feeling of triumph was subtle, almost invisible because they did not measure success by destruction, but by understanding. In the Imperial Palace, debates raged long after the humans had departed. Generals and scientists met in secret chambers, attempting to understand what they had witnessed. Dranix, the science advisor, spoke clearly and calmly. We must recognize that humans are not a typical young species. Their technology is far beyond what we expected for their development stage. They have adapted materials, power systems, and fleet coordination in ways that seem impossible, and yet they wield it with care. A general slammed a hand on the table. Care is irrelevant. They could destroy a fleet 10 times the size of their own. Dranix shook his head. They don't need to. That is the point. Strength does not always require aggression. Their power lies in restraint. The Emperor, who had listened silently, spoke finally. You are all forgetting the most important lesson. Humanity laughs. They face the unknown with amusement, and with that laughter they show fearlessness. That is not something that can be measured in ships or weapons. That is spirit. His words left the council in stunned silence. For the first time, even the most proud generals understood that humans had something different. Something that no map, fleet, or star chart could quantify. Across the galaxy, news of the humans spread like wildfire. Scholars discussed them in libraries on distant worlds. Merchants hoped to trade with them. Young explorers dreamed of visiting Earth and seeing the humans' calm confidence firsthand. The tales were always the same. A small, blue world on the edge of the spiral arm, whose people had faced the mighty galactic empire without fear, and had simply chuckled. Children in faraway star systems asked their teachers about humans. Are they really that brave? They would whisper, and teachers would smile. Yes, they said. They are brave and clever, but most of all, they are human. Back aboard the HSS Venture, Captain Holt called her officers to the main observation deck. The planet below glowed gently under the sunlight. Cities sparkled softly, oceans shimmered, and clouds drifted lazily in the atmosphere. Holt spoke quietly. We have changed history, not through conquest, not through fear, but through demonstration of who we are. The galaxy has met humanity, and they will remember us, not as a threat, but as equals. Lieutenant Silva nodded. Do you think the Empire will return? Perhaps, Holt said, but they will return differently. They will return with respect, maybe curiosity, and that is exactly what we want. There was a silence as everyone watched the planet. Earth was peaceful yet ready. Humanity had proven that even a small species could stand proudly among the stars. In a quiet corner of the galaxy, an Imperial scout ship returned to its homeworld with recordings of the encounter. The pilot, a young officer who had barely spoken since leaving the human system, whispered to himself, They didn't fear us. They laughed. His commander turned to him. Yes, and that is something we must remember. The galaxy is changing. Perhaps we are not the only great civilization. Weeks later, the humans and the Empire began to exchange formal communications. Trade agreements, shared research, and diplomatic channels opened. It was a new era, one that no one could have predicted. The humans were not trying to dominate. They only wished to explore, to understand, and to meet other civilizations on equal footing. And everywhere, the same story was told, how a small blue planet had faced the might of the Galactic Empire and met it with courage, intelligence, and laughter. On Earth, in the United Earth Fleet Command, Admiral Holt and her officers reviewed the recordings of the Imperial fleet's reactions. They expected fear, one officer said quietly. Holt smiled. And instead we gave them something they weren't ready for. Humans who do not bow but who do not attack either. That is what true strength looks like. A junior officer raised his hand hesitantly. Ma'am, what about the laughter? Why did they notice that so much? Holt laughed softly herself. Because it tells them everything. Laughter is a sign of confidence, of understanding, of knowing your place in the universe without needing to dominate. They saw that in us and they can never forget it. The officers smiled, realizing the depth of what had just occurred. This was not simply a military victory or even a technological one. It was a victory of spirit, a demonstration that humans, united and calm, could face the galaxy with strength, wisdom, and grace. From the farthest reaches of the galaxy, Whispers spread of the human laugh, the gentle, calm sound that had echoed through space, reaching even the ears of the mighty galactic empire. It became a symbol, a species that faced the impossible, that met power with patience. And that inspired awe without striking a single blow. And back on Earth, under the quiet blue sky, children played, scientists worked, and humans lived their ordinary lives, unaware that their species had just shifted the balance of power in the galaxy. But somewhere in the vast void, the memory of their chuckle continued to travel. Fleet commanders, diplomats, and explorers would recall it for generations. It was a simple sound, yet it carried a message far greater than words or weapons ever could. Humanity had arrived, and humanity was ready. The galaxy had met its match not in fear, not in violence, but in calm confidence. The laugh of a species that trusted itself, and trusted in the future. The stars themselves seemed to shimmer with a quiet approval, as if the universe recognized that humanity, small and ordinary in appearance, had achieved something extraordinary. And somewhere between worlds, across the void of space, the faint, calm echo of a human chuckle drifted endlessly, a reminder to the galaxy. Strength can be gentle, courage can be quiet, and greatness can appear in the form of a simple laugh.